Good afternoon. I want to thank everybody who joins us. My name is Olga Atamanova, and Ukraine Media Center Ukrinform starts its operation today. It's been 9 years of the war, and it's day 372 of the full-scale invasion of the Russian aggressor in our homeland. And on behalf of all of our team, I want to thank the representatives of all the mass media who tell the world the truth about our fight for freedom. In brief, our schedule for today is as follows. At 1300, joining us in the studio will be Alexander Khara, the Foreign Affairs and Security Policy expert at Center for Defense Strategies, diplomat, advisor to the Defense Minister of Ukraine, and we will be talking about the Western diplomacy. We will be talking about what the Chinese peace plan means. And at 14:30, joining us in this studio will be Yaroslav Shenko, Deputy Head of the Juvenile Prevention Directorate of the National Police. We will be talking about the Redan movement and other youth subcultures and movements existing in Ukraine, and also we will talk about what to do, what should the parents do. And joining us right now online is Yuriy Sobolevskyi, First Deputy Head of Kherson Regional Council. Good afternoon, Mr. Yuriy. Good afternoon, Mr. Yuriy. We see that according to the reports of our general staff, unfortunately the occupiers keep shelling Kherson region on a daily basis, and today was no exception. Unfortunately, we've heard that 1-year-old boy was injured. So can you give us more details on what's going on? What are the consequences here regarding that case? Unfortunately, the enemy's army committed another war crime. The artillery shelled our Chernobyevka, and unfortunately 1-year-old child was injured, as well as his mother. I hope everything will be well with them. The security situation is quite complicated. Within the last day we had 86 documented shellings all across the region, with 11 people injured. Yesterday, yesterday 86 shellings, and today it was 87 shellings. Yesterday there were 5 casualties and 7 people injured, and the enemy continues using the cannon, artillery, MLRS, mortar systems. There were shootings from the tanks documented as well. For the time being, the enemy still has this opportunity for shelling us from short distance. Mr. Yuriy, what's going on with the critical infrastructure? What is the situation with power supply, water supply, and communication? 3 days ago we were facing a problem with the substantial damage of the critical infrastructure. We had problems with heating and power supply. Well, you know, when there is a problem with power supply, there is a respective problem with communication. When the communication substations don't have enough electricity, and now we reestablished the power supply everywhere, all the problems were mitigated, and the specialists, the technicians, keep working on improvement of situation in the communities. There are still settlements which are not connected to the main way infrastructure lines. They are under constant shellings, but we do everything possible to support them, to support the energy supplying companies within the shortest terms possible. What are the top priority steps for yourself? What are the top challenges you're facing? What are the conditions of the life conditions in Kherson community, Kherson region communities in general? Well, for me, top priority is the lives of people. For me, the security situation, as I mentioned, is complicated. We focused all of our efforts to have our medical sector work properly. We were communicating with Medics Without Borders today. Everything works in the city of Kherson, and given the conditions, the regional hospitals keep operating, and there are the mobile teams working in the communities. The ambulance works to the all across the region. However, in some communities where the situation is more complicated, the Medics Without Borders helps us, and the military too. But in general, the operation of the medical sector is quite satisfactory, but in some cases they do the real deed, helping the people under the conditions of constant shellings. What we are still trying to improve is the first aid after the shelling. We implemented the new program together with the military administration for training of national police and state emergency service in provision of first medical aid. So because they are the first people coming on spot to the place of shellings, sometimes even sooner than the ambulance, and time is counted in seconds, and they can save lives. For example, applying a tourniquet. And we try to inform the population about the mine threat, because every week we come across people who either get into a mine trap, or they act uncautiously with explosive devices. It seems like everybody knows that they shouldn't touch it, but every week we come across the cases when people try to disassemble a shell or something like that. Well, something like that should not happen. We should keep on working if we see that things like those happen. Dear colleagues, if you have any questions on the floor, please go ahead. Olga Opanasenko of Ukrinform. Good afternoon. Could you please tell us how's the situation in the agrarian sector? We know that in the left bank of Kherson region, the occupiers cut and steal the equipment from the facilities of Chumak agricultural company. But we know that in the right bank the fields are mined. So how it will influence the sowing campaign in spring? Well, we know that it will be complicated this spring, and we try bringing up this issue, and we try to solve it in cooperation with Ukrainian Agrarian Council and the ministry, because without the government support our farmers will feel very, very difficult. First of all, it's not all the territory which is still cleared from the mines, which poses significant risks for those people working on those land plots. And on the other hand, the orcs stole all the agricultural equipment and machinery. They were stealing the whole manufacturing lines for manufacturing of agricultural products. All the material is in fact destroyed, and in order to renew it, we need time and we need support on part of the government. And I think that the allowance and lending programs will be extended for our agrarians, and I hope that it's an achievement already that our farmers don't have to repay the loans on the real estate which was significantly damaged or completely destroyed during occupation. There are still questions about leasing, and we should solve those issues, because if we want those agricultural businesses to continue working, we should help them, because not all of them would be able to go all that way without support. Mr. Yuriy, maybe the last question will be about the temporarily occupied territories of Kherson region. What information do we have from there? How do people survive there? I'm saying survive because it's probably cannot be called normal life. Well, the situation is very complicated there. It's very difficult in humanitarian sense. In the most of communities, the access to medical services is restricted. The situation with the food supply is also very difficult. There are filtration measures in place all the time because the checkposts are being closed for the entrance and exit. The Russians enter every single house, every single apartment. They check the property rights, whoever was registered there. They check the gadgets, the transport, personal transport, the cars. They look for the people who came to those settlements within the last couple of weeks or month. They press on the parents, so they give their children to the so-called schools. Those are the captured educational institutions, the Ukrainian educational institutions which were captured by the Russians, and they try to create some propaganda pictures. Well, and this is the absurd theater. They dress our children in the children's military uniform, so this militaristic ecstasy they try to impose on children from their very childhood. So they try to draw this propaganda picture for their media for the time being. The only way to live is through Crimea. It has its nuances with intensified search measures. All the people are being interrogated, even the children are being interrogated during crossing of this administrative border, but this is the only way people can live. They live through Crimea and then they come back to either come back to Ukraine or they stay in Georgia or the countries of European Union. Now we see that the occupiers have a huge problem with their government authorities, and the collaborationists that used to work there, they don't want to work there anymore. They try to find opportunities to move. Well, those clever ones are trying to move not even to Crimea but to Russian Federation, because they understand that Crimea will be returned to Ukraine soon. But an interesting fact is that nobody in Russia actually needs them. They face this problem all the time. They are needed to stay in the occupied territories and to do something there, to collaborate. And when they try to take some offices within the authorities of Russian Federation, their applications are being refused and they are being denied all their initiatives. So nobody needs the traitors, that's true. Especially when they try to do something they were never asked to do. Thank you for this information. Thank you for joining our broadcast. I'm reminding you, joining us was Yuriy Sobolevskyi, first deputy head of Kherson Regional Council. Our next briefing is at 13 o'clock. Joining us will be Alexander Hara, and we will be talking and we will be trying to sort out what the Chinese peace plan is. So bear with us, trust in our armed forces, and work together for our victory. Glory to Ukraine.